Now, in the book, you frame the way we think into two different systems. There's the fast system, system 1, and system 2, the slow thinking. Can you explain the difference?
Yes, there are things that just come to your mind. You know, if I say 2 plus 2, the answer comes to your mind. You don't have to decide to do it, it just happens. But if I say, you know, it's a product of 17 times 24, probably nothing comes to your mind. You've got to generate.
But I read your book.
It's actually 408. But that's, you pulled that out of memory, and even that was an effort.
Are there people who best represent, like, you know, public figures that you can think of? This guy is typical of like slow thinking, and this is typical of fast, or is it within all of us?
You can compare the current president and his predecessor,
right?
And
the
one
current
of them
president being much more judicious.
Certainly much more reflective and much more deliberate, and the previous one quite explicitly trusting his intuition, trusting his gut, and very much following what System 1 was telling him to do.
What then are the most common decision-making mistakes involving these systems?
We are biased to like some people and to dislike other people. We are biased by words, so that you are not going to have the same attitude to a cold cut of meat if it's described as 10% fat or as 90% fat-free. People actually are willing to pay more for the latter.
You don't seem in the book, just from a surface reading, to be like a huge fan of intuition. Is it idiotic to go with your gut?
No, it depends. It really depends on the situation. I mean, there are conditions where you know that you are very likely to make a mistake. If somebody has just put a number and you're negotiating and somebody has mentioned a number, you should be very wary, because that number looks more reasonable the moment it has come on the table. So there are mistakes that people do, that you can recognize the circumstances under which those mistakes occur.
Of all the demonstrations, your book lists a lot of really fantastic demonstrations that you did to illustrate this blindness we have to our own biases. What is your favorite?
During a period when there was a fair amount of terrorist activity in Europe, people were asked to consider travel insurance. There were two conditions, and they were asked how much would you pay for a policy that pays $100,000 in case of death for any reason. And other people were asked, how much would you pay for a policy that pays $100,000 for death in a terrorism incident? And people pay more for the second than for the first.
Even though it's less likely?
Even though it's much less likely. But of course they're not comparing the two. They're seeing only one of them, and so they're more afraid. People are certainly more afraid, more frightened by the idea of dying in a terrorist accident than they're frightened by the idea of dying. And the willingness to pay simply reflects fear.
What are the biggest mistakes that people make in thinking about themselves?
Well, in the first place, they think that other people have biases, but that they don't. So we're normally blind about their own blindness. We're generally very overconfident in our opinions and in our impressions and judgments. Many people, not all, but the people who make the most difference to the lives of other people are very optimistic, and they have an illusion of control. And then there is the illusion, which is very important, that the world is more knowable. I mean, we exaggerate how knowable the world is. So, for example, we think that there were people who knew that there was going to be a recession, or a very severe event, and I'm skeptical, because I think they didn't know it. They thought it, and then it happened, but there were other equally knowledgeable, equally intelligent people who knew the same thing and didn't think there was going to be a recession. So we use the word know in peculiar ways, and that strengthens the illusion that we understand the world when we really don't.
I'm aware that you have a Nobel Prize for economics, but do you think that the field of economics has been responsive enough to your discoveries and theories?
Well, I'm a psychologist and not an economist, and I'm actually very surprised that they have been as responsive as they have been. I mean, behavioral economics is now definitely part of the establishment. It's a dominant approach in some of the best departments of economics in the country.
So, which Nobel are you going for next?
Well, no, I mean, what happened to us was an accident, and basically we did psychology and we influenced some people in economics, and I hope that the people that we influence, that they get the Nobel Prize in economics. So I have very strong favorites in that field, but otherwise I don't have any recommendations to the Nobel Committee.